So, for historical overview, this battle was during the end of the Second Anglo Dutch War. And during this time, a treaty to end the war between the two countries was in the process of being created. England was facing financial issues due to the plague and the fire of London, so they were looking to end the war with the Dutch. England's biggest dockyard was the Chatham Dockyard, which had many of the Royal Navy's best ships stationed there. And the Dutch planned to sail up the Medway River and ambush the fleet with a sneak attack that would cripple the Royal Navy. So, for key features, the dockyard at Medway was very far up the river and was not easy to navigate for an enemy attack. Ships there were supposed to be safe, and the British did not expect an attack as something that was plausible or even possible. England was like I said before, was having financial issues, so the fortification around the dockyard was insufficient and ill-equipped. And another feature is that the Dutch did not destroy the dockyard, which would have been catastrophic for the Royal Navy and England as a world power. So this is near the end of the Second Anglo-Dutch War, and many English sailors were also angry with England because they had not been paid in a while, and many of them were starving. And because of this, there are even accounts of sailors helping the Dutch navigate up the river to attack due to their anger at the British government. So, for key issues, the British fleet was protected by an iron chain, which was blocking the Dutch from entry into Chatham from the River Medway. The Dutch had to find a way to break this chain, or they'd be stuck in the river without access forward. And so, this is an account of the Dutch breaking through the chain and advancing forward. On June 12th, the Dutch arrived in Gillingham's Reach and sent several ships to break the chain. The Dutch vessels succeeded not only in breaching the barrier, but also in capturing or destroying several nearby English warships. Navigating around the 10 block ships, other Dutch ships destroyed or captured the remaining enemy warships. The English themselves had not sunk. One of the captured vessels was the HMS Royal Charles, a 3 deck, 80-gun ship of the line. Their skeleton crew fled, and the ship allegedly was captured by just 9 Dutch soldiers. So for the English, their main issue was a lack of resources and manpower due to poor financial state of England at the time, as well as bad morale among the available men due to not having been paid for a long period of time. Many men were also starving due to both lack of food and lack of money. And also because of these issues, the only English shoreline defense that was protecting the fleet was Upnor Castle, and that castle was also severely ill equipped to deal with the enemy's ships. For key principles of war, this raid helps us understand the principles of war in a number of ways. The first is the idea of setting an objective and striking fast and strategically to accomplish this objective. The Dutch displayed this in their raid because they had a goal of crippling the Royal Navy by destroying and capturing the ships that were at anchor near the Medway. And they went about this with a strategy that they followed precisely. This raid also displayed ideas of navigation and maneuvers, which the Dutch used to be able to access their enemy even though they were in a protected dockyard. Maneuverability was also key for the Dutch, as it was the thing that ultimately allowed them to get the upper hand on the British in such a devastating manner. So, the key outcomes of this, one of the main outcomes of the raid was the utter humiliation for England and their military in a way that they hadn't seen or experienced before. The Royal Charles, which was the second biggest ship in the Royal Navy at the time, was captured by the Dutch and taken away. But the most important outcome of this was the Treaty of Breda, which was made more favorably for the Dutch in the wake of the raid and was signed by England out of desperation. So this account says King Charles considered breaking off the peace talks at Breda in response to the Dutch attack, but England was in no position to continue the war. Public sentiment now ran as strongly against the king as it did against the Dutch. As if to reemphasize their military advantage, the Dutch landed 1,600 Marines and sailors at Harwich on the 2nd of July. Though the force was successfully repulsed, it was clear that the Dutch still held the initiative. They could sail freely along England's coast, launching raids as they pleased, while the English could do nothing but mobilize militia to fend off the landings. Finally, King Charles instructed the English representatives at Breda to drop many of their demands. The resulting peace treaty was signed just days later, on July 21st, 1667. None of England's goals had been achieved in the conflict. Among the few significant territorial changes affirmed by the treaty were the pre war English capture of New Netherland and the Dutch retention of Suriname. So, this would ultimately play a major role in the start of the Third Anglo Dutch War, also, due to the English people not being happy about this outcome or the terms of the treaty. So, this ties into the idea of the military revolution of the 16th and 17th century because it displayed new ways of fighting and new tactics for warring nations. A sneak naval raid on this scale, with this amount of destruction, had never really been done before. It was the result of the military revolution and its impact on warring European nations. There was also a display of new technological developments that impacted naval warfare in the 17th century, like artillery, fire ships, as well as ship maneuverability and small water passages. This raid also impacted where ships and dockyards would be set up and defended in the future, and how navies could be used in new ways, such as destroying enemy ships and supplies while not in active battle, as well as raiding coastal towns and economic centers, and to prevent the movement of other enemy ships.